Now, moving on, the Prime Minister and Treasurer have visited more than 26 key seats in 5 states during the last week, and they're set to take the entire cabinet to WA in July. What do you think, Julian, this suggests about us heading to the polls this year? Can you give us a little scoop tonight?
Well, I'm sorry, Gerard, I don't think I can. I think the Prime Minister has been very consistent on this for a long time, both before the pandemic and since the pandemic, that he's a Prime Minister who wants to serve the full term, and that he's been clear about an election next year, not this year. This is very common, that you have a budget come out one week and then that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer spend the following week going and selling the budget. And there's a lot of great news in the budget. It's a budget that has gone down extremely well. It's gone down well because it's got tax cuts for middle and lower income earners. It's got the continuation of the apprentice wage subsidy. It's got the instant asset write-off for small businesses, which allow businesses to employ more people, create more jobs, invest more in their businesses. And as I've been going around my electorate, as I'm sure the Prime Minister and the Treasurer have been going around the different places that they visited, the budget has got a very good, very strong reception.
Andrew, I was speaking to your colleague Patrick Gorman last week, and he was a bit bemused at what was going on with the selling of the budget. What's being said in caucus around ideas about a potential campaign in an election in 2021?
Well, Jenna, we're ready to go anytime an election is called. I think if it's this year, it'll be only because the Prime Minister thinks that his odds are going to fall next year. The thing is, though, with this Prime Minister, you really wish he would put as much energy into jabs as snaps. He's very good at getting these photo ops, rolling out red carpet, but he's been pretty hopeless at rolling out the vaccine to Australians. We now have 70% of Britons who've had a jab, 60% of Americans, and yet less than 1% of Australians are fully vaccinated. That's not only got health challenges, but also potential economic costs. The Treasurer was out there telling us last year that state government lockdowns were costing the economy $4 billion a week. And yet his budget was curiously silent on the impact of the delayed vaccine rollout on the economy. We know it's got to be substantial, though. Australia gains a lot from openness, and so we lose a lot from keeping the economy closed as a result of the government not being able to do the vaccine rollout. 4 million they promised by the end of March. We're past halfway through May, and we're still not at that target.
I think if I can respond, Jenna, may I respond? I just wanted to say a couple of things. I think it's important to remember how different life is here in Australia to so many countries overseas. I mean, we had the news this week in Britain that people could hug their elderly parents, something that we've been able to do since last year. I addressed a dinner the other night of 1,000 people. There are most countries around the world that cannot do that. We have done extremely well in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as for the vaccinations, we've got 3.6 million people have had at least their first vaccination. We had on Friday, I think, a record 100,000 vaccinations in a day. The vaccine rollout is going apace, and it will continue to roll out. But I think we are doing well in this country, and you only need to see again the economic benefit of the government's good economic stewardship, in that we've got unemployment going down to 5.5%. We heard from the Labor Party that we needed to maintain JobKeeper on and on and on. These are post-JobKeeper's abolition figures, and yet despite the abolition of JobKeeper, the unemployment rate keeps falling. That demonstrates the government's good economic management and the twinning of that good economic management with the good management in relation to health effects of COVID-19.
Well, I guess on that, Julie, with that... Sorry, over to you, Andrew.
I was speaking to a travel agent in my electorate the other day, and he's worried about having to let staff go. He points out that the government had been talking about opening the international border this year. Now it looks like it wouldn't be until next year. In the United States, people are booking tickets to go and spend summer in Europe. There's no prospects of that sort of tourism taking place in Australia anytime soon, but there'll be probably hundreds of thousands of people flying across the Atlantic this summer. It just reflects what happens when you have such a slow vaccine rollout, that you're not able to get the economy back to normal. Still a lot of jobs in the international tourism, higher education sectors where they're going to struggle without reopening the economy. Not to mention the way in which migration has powered our economy for past decades.
Julian, just to go back to your point when you're addressing a crowd of 1,000 people, and I'm sure that you do a lot of great work in your electorate, what are you hearing in terms of, is there a difference in messaging from, say, the general public and business leaders? Because I know that the Prime Minister is under a bit of pressure from business leaders to have a date of when we're going to open the international borders from a business point of view. What are you hearing in your electorate?
Well, I'm hearing that people are feeling very lucky to be in Australia and not somewhere else. I mean, as we look around in places like America, which lost more people to COVID-19 than they did in World War I, World War II and Vietnam combined, when we look at Britain that had one of the highest per capita death rates in the world, when we look at countries to our near north, places like India and other parts of South Asia now that are facing new strains of COVID-19. I think people are very appreciative that we have taken a sensible approach in relation to this. This pandemic isn't over, and we will open our borders when the health advice suggests that it is safe to do so. We'd all like life to go back to normal, but I think it's also worth reflecting that there are large parts of Europe and large parts of the United States that don't have the level of freedoms that we have in Australia today currently internally, and that is something that people are very pleased with, that we've got such a level of freedom, and we've also got much better growth rates than they do. I mean, growth has been massively written down in places like the US and the UK and Canada, whereas in Australia we only had a growth dip of 2.6%. We have unemployment of 5.5%. That is lower than when we went into the COVID-19 pandemic. There are very, very few countries around the world, if any, that can say that today.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of months as we all line up to get our jabs.